What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel today, man. We're going to talk about Deontay Johnson and the trade. Did the Panthers lose the trade? It really. They didn't necessarily lose the trade because the chances of Deontay Johnson coming back were going to be slim to none. On top of that, you got to look at two factors. First one is, does Deontay Johnson fit the scheme of what Dave wants to do? The answer to that is no, right? That's not going to fit the scheme. The second thing is, if you go back to last week when Andy Dalton was starting, and there was a play where Deontay Johnson kind of gave up on the route, and Andy Dalton basically avoided him every play after that where Deontay Johnson was open. The film says it, right? So those two things alone kind of told you that Deontay Johnson wasn't going to be a Panther long term. Now, as far as the trade, I believe the Panthers had to pay a little bit of that contract. They gave up a sixth and Deontay Johnson for the Ravens' fifth. Now, a lot of people are like, well, the Panthers, once again, they got screwed and they got taken advantage of. They got fleeced. Yes and no, and here's why. I'm sure if there was a better deal than a fifth-round pick for Deontay Johnson, the Panthers would have taken it, right? you would hope that the Panthers would take a better deal than getting a fifth round for Deontay Johnson. But when it's all said and done, most likely that's all that was there. And the reason is, after this year, he was going to walk. And teams knew that. So they're not going to go above and beyond when they don't have to. Now, the other part to look at is, how did we get Deontay Johnson? Well, we gave up Dante Jackson to get him, right? The defensive back who's now in the Steelers. And this is where it gets interesting. You see Dante Jackson balling out, and you're like, okay, why did we exchange these guys? And once again, it's another Panther who's balling out who left Carolina, right? So this whole Deontay Johnson thing, to me, is like it's such a small thing on such a bigger scale, because it shows you, we're not only having problems on the offensive side as far as trading pieces away and then they take off and go kill another team. It's also defensively, right? The Commanders' defense, whether Louvu wanted to be here or not, that's beside the point. Chin's doing his thing over there too. That's now three guys that we had on the team last year: Chin, Louvu, Dante Jackson. So you could say Canales, you could say Tepper, you could say Avero. It's the whole organization, right? So, I don't know. It's hard to say on what needs to happen, right? Because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot, because if you look at the team now, I think it's going to be a completely different team next year. I think we're probably going to trade at some point, and hopefully we do that before preseason starts next year, right? And hopefully we actually bring in some playmakers. I thought we were on defense, but when I go back and I look at it, Josie Jewell, he's definitely up there in age. Clowney, he's definitely up there in age. DJ Wanham's coming off the injury. I'm like, what are we doing here? Then you bring in the safeties who had a year or two of starting, not a lot, which is why we got them for cheap. The Panthers at some point are going to have to just basically rebuild that whole defense, right? They're just going to have to. I mean, there's not really a bright spot other than really Trevin Wallace, I guess, even though he's still young, and Derek Brown. Other than that, we don't have a bright spot on this team. Antonio, welcome to the channel, my man. You think we are working on trades, and also you think we're going to get players in return? I think we are working on trades, and I think we're going to get, fingers crossed, I think we'll get a better outcome than just a fifth-round pick in the next couple weeks, or week and a half, give or take. I would like to think that anyway. And the reason I say that is, I think Deontay Johnson, that was the best they could do, right? So they just moved him, got him out of the roster, got him, out of the locker room. That's taken care of, right? Now there's Adam Thielen. Now there's Clowney. Now there's, potentially J.C. Horn, Chuba Hubbard. Those are names that are being thrown around. And I think we're going to get more in return. So we're kind of waiting to see what we do with those. What's going on, Chuck? So it's going to be interesting to see who's still on this team come the trade deadline. I think that's November 5th. Let me check on that real quick. But I want to say that is November 5th. Let's see. The trade deadline is November 5th. So the trade deadline is this Tuesday coming up. So, we have this week and then we go to Germany. And the Germany game is going to be interesting because there's a good chance this team looks different. Now, what do I hope the Panthers get? Honestly, I really hope it's just draft capital, to be honest, because we keep bringing in guys and they're not really making an impact. Excuse me. I guess Mike Jackson, he's done his thing at the DB position, but other than that, I mean, I don't know how many transactions they made from training camp to the first week where we didn't even know who our starting edge rusher was going to be. They released Caleb on 5 days, maybe less before the first game. So I really hope we stop trying to bring in guys off, a roster and we try and develop some guys because the draft, they did pretty good on the draft, to be honest. Trevin Wallace, he's struggling a little bit, but as you guys know, the Panthers, they reached for him to begin with, and they obviously did not expect him to start. But that's what happens when Shaq and Josie Jewell go down. So Trevin Wallace has been all right. Shaw Smith-Wade is the big kind of question mark because you look at him and you're like, oh, he's a slot corner. But then you find out he didn't play slot, right, in the corner position in college. So now he has to completely learn that position. So he's definitely going through some rough patches. Brooks, we still haven't seen yet, which is a little bit, I could say scary. But if that's Dave's dream guy, if that's who Dave wanted, Dave probably isn't going to risk playing him considering how the Panthers are doing, right? I mean, at what, 1-7? Jeez, 1-7's bad. But at 1-7, there's really no point in playing Brooks, right? And so you got Brooks, you got Shaw Smith-Wade, you got Wallace, and then you got Sanders, Jatavion Sanders. He's been pretty good. He's not the most physical tight end, but as far as pass catching, he's been pretty good. They traded the 7th round pick to get, I think, Mike Jackson. So overall, I was actually impressed with the Panthers drafting. I thought they reached on a couple of guys, but that could definitely pan out. So when it's all said and done, I hope we don't trade and try and get more players. I hope we trade and just get draft capital. Chuck says, is Thielen healthy? I think XL and Thielen out wide in the slot. Could be slot for Bryce. So here's the thing with that. I went back and I watched the film. I just got busy with work and I haven't been able to do a video on this yet. But what's going to be solid for Bryce is if we get the run game going. And the Broncos just completely obliterated us last week. So we could have XL, Thielen, Coker, whoever out there out wide. But we have to get a run game going, Chuck. And against the Broncos last week, I saw the film, all the run plays we had. I apologize to Dave Canales because, man, he was trying, but it looks like guys on the offensive line, tight ends, I won't say any names, but there's a certain one who's been here for his blocking, right, who got demolished last week. So we can have whoever, but if there's no run game, there's no blocking, I don't think it's going to matter, to be honest. Antonio says, if we do get something in return in some trades, which players do you want? Oh, it's hard to say because, like I said, we're 1-7, right? So where do we go from here? They keep bringing in guys. Honestly, maybe an edge rusher. Maybe just get in a couple edge rushers. Let's just see if we can get somebody who's going to get some type of pressure because, I mean, this is getting ridiculous. Week after week, play after play, there's no pressure. It's honestly pathetic, right? To keep it PG, it's pathetic. So if I want to see anything, probably an edge rusher. If you go through the offense, I mean, quarterback, I'm not going to say we're set, but you could have Bryce Young, Plummer kind of battle it out. Running backs were definitely set. Receivers, I think we're set. I would still like to see a speedster, Antonio. That might be the one thing on offense, right? If we can trade somebody, get some draft capital, and then like a practice squad speedster, kind of see what this offense can do if we open it up, I would like to see that. So offensively, probably that. Defensively, I mean, really anything in the front seven. Josie Jewell, he's not going to be around here for a while. I can guarantee you that. Shaq's probably done. Edge rushers, what? Charles Harris, Clowney, they're probably done. So you got Sean, Derek Brown in the middle. That's all you got. So, I mean, it's hard to say. And, I could say a safety, but I mean, that's essentially what we've done the last, 2 or 3 years. We've had average to below average safeties, and look what keeps happening. We keep getting beat over the top time and time again. So, Chuck says Canales seemed excited when the reporter asked about Wanham. Wanham has a lot of potential, I think, with this team, but at the same time, I'm not sure. And the reason for that is because let's say Wanham starts to go off in theory. All that's going to happen is a guard is just going to basically chip him, a tight end's going to chip him and slow him down, and somebody else is going to have to do their thing. So, I mean, yeah, DJ Wanham in theory sounds good coming back, but when it's all said and done, the second he starts to have a little bit of success, teams are just going to target him. And so then you're like, okay, well, somebody else will get open. I mean, who? Who's going to not get open, but create pressure? No, who's going to create pressure? Nobody has, right? So it's a little frustrating and disheartening, to be honest, because it's like, okay, if DJ Wanham can take 2 guys with him, somebody else could potentially, create pressure. We haven't seen that yet, though, so we'll see. We got peak Josie Jewell play last week against the Broncos. It's all down here, It's all down here from there. I mean, I thought he did all right. A lot of it's just pass rush. Bo Nix had all the time in the world, and at some point, we have to send the house. And let me pull it up, and here's why. All right, let's see. ESPN Panthers, Broncos, 28-14. Here's why we need pass rush. All right. The leading tackler last week was Damani Richardson. Damani Richardson was the leading tackler. Now, he's a safety, okay? And the reason that's a problem that he was the leading tackler is half the time he was playing man coverage, okay? And there was no pressure. So the safety is going to be the guy to get beat against man-to-man coverage the quickest. And he's a rookie on top of that. So all Bo Nix had to do was just look at who Damani's going to pick up and target him every single time. It's the same thing that happened the week before that with Shaw Smith-Wade. Who's Shaw Smith-Wade guarding in man-to-man coverage? Bang. Target him. So the Panthers have to get pass rush of some sort. Would you like Darius Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson? I don't know that either one of those guys. I mean, Slayton to me might just be a tad faster Adam Thielen. I don't know that he's going to change the game. Wan'Dale's good, but to me, Wan'Dale's just he's a mix of Deontay and Adam Thielen, if you ask me. I don't know that they're game changers. I don't think that the offense is a big problem as far as the defense. Offense, I'm pretty sure we're going to fix that with the draft and free agency coming up. I don't know that we're going to be able to trade for anybody right now that's going to basically change how this thing goes. To be honest, Antonio, the offense we're going to have to build in the offseason, unfortunately. Matthew says neither. Yeah, if we're going to trade something, I'd rather get draft capital. And you don't necessarily have to use the draft capital for the draft, Antonio. You can use that as trade bait, whether we move up, move back, That's kind of my thoughts on that. So the whole thing with trading Deontay Johnson, yeah, we move up a little bit. We get their 5th. We give them our 6th. We move up a little bit, and sometimes that can mean a lot. Now, yes, it's the 5th round, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, but you never know who might want that, and okay, do you use that for next year, right? So that's kind of my take on that whole Deontay Johnson kind of thing. Yes, we moved up a few spots, but you never know what that could lead into moving forward, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's we're in a tough spot right now. That Matthew says that DJ trade hurt, but I kind of get it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he had to go. right? And I don't know if you were in here at the beginning of this, Matthew, but what I touched on was one, he doesn't fit the scheme of what Dave wants to do, right? Two, the fact that Andy Dalton was avoiding him after he kind of gave up on the route, right? You can say what you want to say, but you look at those two things alone, I mean, it wasn't going to work. It was just going to grow to be miserable for everybody else, right? So it's frustrating. Deontay Johnson's a hell of a receiver, but this is one of the few teams where Dave wants to be a run first team in the NFL. And so if that's the case, and you look at Deontay Johnson, the effort he gives on run plays, it's not there. The Ravens took him, and that's going to be interesting. I'm actually shocked that the Ravens took him, to be honest. Now, part of me thinks they did it because, he was kind of that home. He played in Pittsburgh for so long, right? And so it's like he might know a little something because the Steelers, they're doing their thing over there. So maybe it's a little bit of, okay, he's a pretty good receiver, but he also can give us a little bit of intel as well. That's kind of my take on that one. Chuck says Panthers draft needs for defense, everything. Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate, but what's going to be interesting is, will Avero be here next year? And my gut tells me no. My gut honestly says no. And if that's the case, who do we bring in? And like Rock says right here, the scheme will get changed, right? So you got to change the defensive scheme. So who's Canales' choice of defensive coordinator after they fire Avero this season? So basically, played on to right to what I was saying. I mean, Rock, that's a great question, right? Is it going to be Dave that decides, or is it going to be Tepper? My gut, it's going to be most likely Tepper. Now, Dave will have some type of input, and then you also have Brant Tillis kind of in the middle between him and Dan Morgan too. So I don't know that's going to be up to Dave. I think this one's more of a Dan Morgan call, to be honest with you. And I'm not mad at that, to be honest. I wish Avero worked, but you can see the last 2 years it hasn't worked. And you've got other players defensively now balling out on other teams. So I think there has to be a change defensively. We need one. We'll see what happens. I thought Avero, kind of coming onto the team, it's going to change things around, but it looks worse. It looks worse this year than it did last year. Last year we also had a little bit better players, I think, that were healthy, but man, it looks bad this year, and it's just the same thing every single time. The QB has way too much time to throw every single week. Matthew says Snack Sala, Robert Sala, definitely not a bad pick. A lot of hype around him in New York, and New York, man, that's a different breed. Trying to head coach in New York, man, that's a whole different breed. So I would not be mad at the Robert Sala one. Dixon says, I don't hate the move on Johnson. He was leaving, want to get paid. We can't pay him. We can't pay him, and it wasn't going to work. I think of this almost, Dixon, like the Baltimore offense. What's his name that's on the Chiefs? Marquise Brown, right? I think Marquise Brown left Baltimore because he wanted more catches. And, as a receiver, you get that big payday when you have all those catches, you have all those yards. If you don't have those catches and yards, it's going to be hard to try to negotiate for a contract when your contract looks, or your stats look like, 60 catches for 600 yards. Well, there's like 30 other receivers doing exactly that too. So Deontay Johnson wasn't going to work here, and I don't know that he'll work on Pittsburgh or Baltimore either. But, we'll see what happens there. I think we have a pretty good receiving core. I say pretty good. I say that lightly with not Deontay, Leggett, Coker, Thielen. If Thielen's still on the team, I think, I'm not going to lie. If I'm thinking about this optimistically for Adam Thielen, I hope he gets traded, because this team is what? At least you got to think at least 3 years from actually competing. Adam Thielen's already, 33, 34 years old. I don't think he wants to be here for another 3 years, to be honest. So I hope for Adam Thielen's sake, he does get traded, to be honest with you. And that leaves the Panthers with a pretty thin but a young receiving core that can grow, which would definitely be nice. Well, let's see. Receiving core right now, we got XL, Coker, David Moore, Mingo, and Adam Thielen. we don't have a lot. I mean, ah, yikes. So we'll definitely be bringing in quite a few receivers, I would imagine, in the offseason training camp. Let's see. Coker looks promising. Dan Morgan gets points for getting him. Yeah, it seems like Dan and Dave Brandt, and I guess you want to throw Tepper in there because he has his hands on everything. They've done a pretty good job bringing guys in. It's just the trades where we're like, we really could have done a little bit better than that. Like that's the big thing about just not even them, the Panthers in general. Really, since Tepper took over, is you're a business guy and we can't do better than that. Like who's around you? So yeah, I mean Dan Morgan, Dave, they brought in some guys. Mike Jackson showed out. Coker's doing good. You've got pieces. It's just, can we get some better deals on the trades? Adam Thielen, I don't know that we will. I don't know that we'll ship him off. Part of me hopes they do. Part of me hopes they don't. I think whether it's Bryce Young starting, Andy Dalton starting, Plummer starting, he's just a nice piece to have when nobody else is open, right? You have a bunch of young guys. There's going to be mistakes. It's nice to have a kind of go-to guy like Adam Thielen, to be honest. I feel pretty good about Coker and Excel. I do too. You got to think about Jatavion Sanders too. Jatavion Sanders, I don't love him in the in the run game, but the pass game he's done his thing. And to be honest, I'm shocked that Sanders actually isn't getting the ball more in a different route concept. Because if I remember right, looking at the past few games, Sanders has had medium to deep passes, but it's not like a 5-yard hitch. It's not like a drag route. I'm hoping to see Sanders kind of get involved more in the short passing game, to be honest. Dixon says Adams got traded for a third round to the Jets for a fifth. Devontae Adams. So a fifth for no, that's true. Yeah, and what? I think Hopkins was a fourth to the Chiefs. So yeah, I mean a fifth isn't too bad at all. Chuck says I think they just want to get rid of Deontay at any cost so they could play the Rucks. To a point. Now, if Deontay was smart, to be honest with you, this goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. If Deontay was smart, he would have stayed happy in Carolina to have a hell of a year. You know, whether Bryce or Andy was starting, I still think he'll do more numbers in Carolina, or would have done more numbers in Carolina than he would have done in Baltimore. And then he can use that as not trade value, but kind of money value moving on to his team next year. Because if he goes to Baltimore, they already have a decent amount of weapons. Now, receiving core, yes, it's not the strongest, but you got to realize Baltimore is kind of like New England, back in the day where they play the inside out. So if I look at Baltimore real quick, they got Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson, Rashad Bateman. Okay. But they also have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Plus Derrick Henry at the running back. So you got Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and then Deontay Johnson, plus Rashad Bateman. To me, if I'm Deontay Johnson, I'm regretting not figuring out in Carolina, because in Carolina he would have been the number one weapon. He's going to go to Baltimore. I mean, you might win, but you got one more year to get that big contract. I don't know. Let's see. Matthew said, I'm not a big Mike Jackson fan. He's like an older CJ Henderson. He's good for what. All right, so you got to look at it like this, Matthew. He's good for what we got for him, right? We gave up Michael Barrett, the 7th round pick. That's not bad. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to Mike Jackson, I wasn't expecting anything crazy from him, but we also don't have the safeties being disciplined either. And I think that's kind of hindering Abero's play calling a little bit. It seems like nobody on the defense is allowed to play to their strengths because there's just so many weaknesses that one piece can't complement another piece. That's what we were supposed to do with Clowney and DJ Wanham, right? Clowney's on one side, Wanham's on the other side, Derek Brown in the middle. Somebody was supposed to get pressure to get a one-on-one with the other guy. It's not working. So Mike Jackson, we'll see what happens. CJ's a whole different breed, though. CJ's a whole different breed. Rock says, can't have all rookies. They need a few veterans to learn from. 100%. That's why I think Deontay Johnson should have tried to figure it out, but he chose not to. I noticed that Sanders is involved on most of the scripture drives, like the first one. Those calls on the first drive are always creative. Miles Sanders, Dave has definitely been trying to use him. It's still not working. Could he get traded? Potentially. I was honestly shocked he didn't go this year, to be honest with you. Just because we have Raheem, you have Chuba, you have Brooks. I thought you'd trade Miles, to be honest, and then you bring up Dylan Johnson. I like watching Dylan Johnson a lot in the preseason game, but I guess Dave thought he could use Miles Sanders. I just don't think he fits Dave's scheme. I think Miles Sanders' best bet is going back to Philly, to be honest with you. Matthew says, I get that. So, as you can see, man, the Panthers have a lot of decisions to make, and like Rock said right here, excuse me, can't have all rookies. So, we will have to bring in some veterans offensively if Adam Thielen decides to leave or we trade him. The question is, who's it going to be? So this is going to be a quick stream, though, guys. Got some stuff to do. Still a little tired from work. I appreciate everybody who came onto the stream. May go live again this weekend before the game starts. Stay tuned for that. Let me know your thoughts. Deontay Johnson, gone, not gone, and who else do you guys think is going to get traded for the trade deadline in 6 days? Let me know. I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy, guys.